It sure seems like FanDuel Sportsbook is begging the public to take Kansas State on Saturday, but do I think they should take the bait? Let's talk about that and more coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. And as you can tell if you're watching me on YouTube today, well, I have a golf outfit on. Got to get out to the course and do some practice here this afternoon at some point, because this is a quick digression here. I promise I'm going to bring it back home to Missouri. But there's a lot of studies out there that say that people who start playing golf, well, within about 3 years, they've gotten about as good as they're going to get. In other words, only about 10% of golfers tend to improve after starting the game after just a few short years. Well, when it comes to betting, I have a feeling that the reason all these sports books, like FanDuel Sportsbook, of course, and, well, all these casinos in Vegas keep making money is, I'm guessing only about 10% of sports bettors actually make money. But you know what? I want you, the 10%, I want you to be part of that 10%, just like I believe I'm going to be at golf. And here's something I've been focusing a lot on this week, because subjectively speaking, it really seems like the Missouri-Kansas State line should be higher. In fact, there was some line movement over at FanDuel Sportsbook this week. Missouri opened as 4.5-point underdogs, moved up to 5.5 at one point, but as I speak here on a Thursday morning, the line has actually moved down all the way to 3.5. So Missouri just a little bit over a field goal underdog at the moment. And something I've been saying is, wow, it really seems like FanDuel Sportsbook is begging you to take Kansas State. And here's what I mean by that, because I'm not sure I've explained myself enough. Because again, on paper, it sure seems like the 15th ranked K-State Wildcats, who pummeled Missouri last season, let's be honest, in Manhattan, should probably be favored by more than 3.5 against a team that, by our Missouri fan base's own expectations, has performed somewhat below expectations despite a 2-0 start. And, you know, I was thinking the line would open at maybe 6.5 based on how Missouri has started the season so far. And it started creeping that way, but now down to 3.5. So how do we explain this? Well, number one, home underdogs, especially in Power 5 type conferences, is usually a good spot. You look at it statistically, you bet on home underdogs, well, you're probably going to do a lot better than you would with betting most other spots. And speaking of spots, it's also a huge spot for Missouri. This is obviously their first true sellout in 4 years, apparently. Just a game that's been circled all offseason for Missouri, without question. If the Tigers are going to hit their upside, they almost have to win this game. They really do. And also, there's another reason I think that the line is lower than people think, and it's statistically, well, Missouri underachieved last week. If you just look at success rates, meaning, hey, was this a good play or not, essentially? Most of the time, what's considered a successful play on first down is if you gain half the yards or more toward a first down. Second down, it's 3/4. And then third or fourth down, it's just get the line to gain or not. If you get a first down on third down or fourth, or you don't, that's considered a success. So the point is that there were a lot of plays in that ball game that maybe happened at a bad time for Missouri. For instance, fourth and goal from at the end of the game there, Nicholas Vettiato, give him some credit, threw an incredibly difficult pass going the wrong way with his momentum across the middle of the field, across his body for a touchdown. I mean, that was a spectacular play by him, but not the type of play necessarily that is sustainable against a really good Missouri defense. So the point is, lines are largely set by the advanced statistics these days, much more than they are just based on the scoreboard. Because if you only looked at the scoreboard, well, obviously you would think Missouri had played a disappointing ball game. But here's the thing. I just made a whole case for Missouri there, but here's the problem. I've watched every snap of it. Heck, I've watched every snap of it 2 or 3 times from my coach's cam footage, the all-22 stuff. I just can't get there with Missouri this week. And maybe I know too much, but frankly, I suspect that I know the right amount. And I've never wanted to be more wrong here, truly. But right now, I've got Kansas State winning this football game 20-14. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think there's some adjustments that Missouri can make offensively heading into week 3 here. Some simple ones, frankly, that can make this offense work a lot better. The problem is, after the first 2 weeks, I'm no longer confident in Eli Drinkwitz to make those adjustments. Hopefully Missouri comes out firing on Saturday, and I just get to eat a big, fat, heaping plate of crow on Saturday afternoon when I do my post-game show. The problem is, again, the reason I can't personally get there at this moment is that my premise for Missouri going 8-4 this season, which is what I predicted before the start of this season, it was all based around the fact that Missouri's offense, I was hoping, would look more like it did under Bush Hamdan the last few games of the regular season when Eli Drinkwitz turned over play calling to him. But so far, unfortunately, it's looking a lot more like the offense when Drinkwitz was calling plays in 2022. But again, we're only 2 ball games deep here, and that's one of many reasons that college football is a very, very silly sport, because even the NFL isn't this overreactionary. I think most people, after watching the Bengals look terrible and Joe Burrow, for instance, last week, I know I'm in the camp of, the Bengals, they'll probably be fine. I wouldn't panic after 1 week. If you saw Alabama look like that after 1 week, certainly Missouri, if you saw them look like that, score 3 points against a hated rival there in their first game and just look putrid offensively, you'd already be panicking, much less comparing an 0-2 or 2-0 start in Major League Baseball and trying to make a big grand conclusion out of that is obviously silly. But you know what? That's college football. We're given small sample sizes and we have to react from them. It's just important to remind ourselves that through 2 weeks, while we think we know a lot, and at this moment, I hate to say it, I just can't get there for picking Missouri today. I could easily be wrong come Saturday afternoon. And on my previous shows this week, if you're an everydayer, you'll know that I'm really a fan of Theo Weiss so far, and I think he's actually been more impressive than what his relatively moderate stat line has shown so far. There's a lot of reasons for that, but also maybe me talking about Theo a lot this week has maybe I've overlooked Luther Burden a little bit, because he's obviously off to a tremendous start. And one thing I've seen on film from Luther is a football player, a guy who's just matured tremendously on the football field so far here in his true sophomore season. But speaking of making mature decisions, you know what? Let's talk about Jase Medical, because everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase Case. The Jase Case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you a peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. And, of course, tomorrow and each and every Friday on my Locked On Mizzou YouTube channel and all the Locked On College YouTube channels, you can check out college football kickoff live from 10 a.m. to noon, again, every Friday during the college football season, giving you the type of in-depth insights and analysis that only our Locked On College hosts can give you, covering their team every day. So find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live again every Friday from 10 a.m. to noon Central on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. And certainly you don't want to miss Luther Burden's 2023 season. He seems poised to just have a massive year for the Tigers. I think it's quite clear at this point already through 2 games that the slot position just seems to fit Luther Burden and his skill set better for a whole lot of pretty obvious reasons, in my opinion, that we've gone over many times on this program before. But more subtly, I just think what you're seeing is a more mature player at the wide receiver position in particular, but also in terms of punts as well. You may not have seen during Luther Burden's deep route here that actually connected from Cook to Luther Burden down the field. Just an excellent route run by Burden to get himself open on this play. In fact, why should you take my word for it? Let's pop up the play here for those of you watching on YouTube. But of course, I'll describe it the best I can here on audio as well. And, I thought this was a really well-designed play for as much crap as I've given Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore so far here. I got to give him credit for a well-designed play here that I think confused perhaps the MTSU defense a little bit here right before the snap. Of course, you see Luther Burden here in his usual slot position. I believe that's Mookie Cooper here on the outside next to him. Just before the snap, you'll see Cooper is put in motion, and for all intents and purposes here right at the snap, well, Burden and Cooper switch spots. Burden is now running to the outside. So ironically enough, the biggest play of the game for Burden, essentially he's the outside receiver on this particular play, even though he does initially line up in the slot. But what happens? Well, Burden runs to the outside, runs almost a stick and nod type of route where he makes this guy think he's going to run down the sidelines, but oh no, puts his foot in the ground, turns the receiver around completely. I mean, this is just a really good subtle route here by Burden and a good play design as well that gets him open. But, good protection as well by Missouri. Cook steps up in the pocket here. This was just a nice play overall by the Tigers. But again, I just love to see this type of maturation from Luther Burden as a receiver. And not only that, I think in the punt return game, you've just seen him catch the ball, secure it quickly, not let it bounce around on the ground a lot as he did in high school. Something that he did a lot in high school was let the ball bounce, pick it up off the bounce, and quite often run it in for a touchdown. He figured out last season, I think, that the risk isn't really worth the reward there necessarily. College special teams, obviously a whole different level than high school. So what we've seen so far in the punt return game is Luther Burden field the ball cleanly, take one step to the outside, quickly make a quick decision, and get 10 to 15 yards and get what's there. So I just love everything I've seen from Burden so far this season. And I think actually him and Theo Weiss together, if you can just Drinkwitz, I talked a lot about using the seams, using them on different sides and trying to attack the defense vertically with both of those guys at the same time. Regardless, I think one thing is defensively, it's fairly easy to scheme away one explosive receiver, I'm not sure how you stop two necessarily. In other words, if there's two explosive receivers going down the field at the same time, I don't know that you can double team both of them without giving up everything underneath the defense. So that's one thing. If you're Kirby Moore, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, you got to be really, really encouraged by what you've seen on film from Burden, obviously, but also Theo Weiss too. And if you can figure out how to get those guys to work together, to me, this offense just has the potential to become a lot more explosive. And by the way, since we're talking about Weiss and Burden, let's talk about those two pass interference calls. There was the offensive pass interference that took away a big play from Theo Weiss. It was called on Burden. And you go back and you look at that play, I got to be honest, as a lot of Missouri fans thought, it seemed every bit as much like the defender for MTSU had grabbed on to Luther Burden as much as it was Burden pushing him out of the way. Now, don't get me wrong, based on the design of that play, both those guys stack up against each other. There's no doubt that Burden's job on that play was to essentially run a legal pick, if you will, get in the way and take out that defender essentially. But to me, that's a legal play by how Burden ran that route. Again, to me, he didn't just he runs a route straight up the field and the MTSU guy kind of hugs him. How is that offensive pass interference on Burden? But then Weiss, late in the ball game, Cook throws a ball deep down the sidelines to him, and I think some Missouri fans thought, ooh, that was a makeup call. That ball might not have been catchable. I'm telling you, you go back and look at it. Again, Weiss deserves a lot of credit here for drawing this pass interference because he's winning at the line of scrimmage, getting open off press coverage down the sidelines. And if you go back and look at it, that's a good ball by Brady Cook, too. It lands in bounds. He's got a chance there to catch that ball if the MTSU defender does not get in Theo Weiss's way. So just my thoughts there on a couple controversial PIs from the MTSU game. And coming up, I want to talk about this weekend's slate in college football, the rest of the games I'm going to be watching on Saturday. But of course, all we really care about is the Missouri-Kansas State game. And if you've been procrastinating on getting tickets to Saturday's ball game, well, there's no reason to stress out because Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're surely going to have. And if you look at the app right now, you can actually get in to the stadium for just $47 all in. And hey, if you want to get down to the 100 level, just a little bit more into the $55, $53 level as well. Believe me, Game Time is the fastest growing ticket app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the ball game. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Well, I wouldn't exactly say the first 2 weeks of college football so far have given us the most exciting matchups I've ever seen. The talk of college football right now, it's all Colorado, right? They're the main event, but Florida State, LSU didn't quite live up to the billing. Alabama, Texas, I'm not really sure how good of a game that was because, well, I was watching the Missouri Middle Tennessee game, of course. But as for the rest of the stuff this weekend, obviously, I'm going to be watching Memphis and Navy tonight, as I said before this week. Missouri's Week 4 opponent there in the Memphis Tigers. But on Saturday, I think maybe the most interesting ball game is Tennessee at Florida because there's a couple things I want to find out here. Number one, last week, Tennessee's offense, it just didn't look the same as it did last season. And as somebody who was not the biggest fan of Joe Milton when he was at Michigan, although I certainly recognize his unbelievable arm strength. There's no doubt about that. Just not the biggest Milton guy in the world. So what is actually real here? And also from Florida's end, Billy Napier here in year 2. Seems like Florida fans are already frustrated with him, despite the fact that, well, he's been doing great off the field in the high school recruiting game. You know, he's just got to find his quarterback eventually. He's got some good young ones, some 5-star type players in terms of recruiting, but he's going to have to start winning a few games because Florida fans, well, in the Deep South, they tend to get pretty impatient, even more impatient than Missouri fans did. And Billy Napier, unlike Eli Drinkwitz, didn't have that first season that sort of beat expectations that's going to give him a little bit more of rope from those Gator fans. So Tennessee, just a 6.5-point favorite right now at Florida. Going to be really interested to see what happens there. Also, Arkansas getting BYU at home as an 8-point favorite. Potential upset there for sure. Wouldn't be a giant one, but let's see what Arkansas has this season as well. Also want to see if LSU, minus 9.5 at Mississippi State, can bounce back after a pretty devastating loss to Florida State. I think a lot of people around Baton Rouge were thinking this team could maybe win the West. Well, maybe they still can. They haven't lost any SEC games yet. Certainly Alabama's already lost a non-conference game as well. So who the heck knows what's going to happen out there? It seems like Georgia is the only team right now that doesn't seem to have any questions in the SEC. Also, Auburn. Are they worth a crap? That's something I'm going to be watching. I thought about that for a second, then I thought, oh, wait a minute. It actually doesn't matter if Auburn's good or not. I'm remembering back to last season and thinking, oh, wait, we don't actually play Auburn this season. They're not in our division. Who cares about Auburn, quite honestly? Well, honestly, that's actually a point in favor of the no division format, because even if Missouri didn't play Auburn in a season, if there's no division, well, we're still fighting it out in the middle of the standings, quite possibly, just like you do on the basketball court. So again, while in a lot of ways, I think there's, in terms of Missouri's chance to actually get back to the SEC championship game, I don't think there's any doubt that it'd be easier just having the division format. But again, that does make it a little bit more interesting from a fan's perspective, that I at least have a reason to follow the rest of the teams in the SEC. And then finally, going outside of the SEC, really interested to see TCU at Houston. Of course, I mentioned Colorado earlier, their big week 1 upset over the Horned Frogs. Was that truly a huge upset, or is TCU in a slightly bit of a rebuilding year, at least compared to their national championship game appearance last season? In fact, if I were a betting man, and I am, I would probably lean toward Houston there. I just think 7.5 on the road seems like a lot. I don't know what TCU's proven yet, and frankly, I'd probably lean toward the same. Mississippi State, give me those 9.5 points against LSU as well. So those are just my thoughts. Don't bet the mortgage on it or anything, but hopefully you've enjoyed this edition of Locked On Mizzou. I'm willing to bet my mortgage that there's some more fans and friends out there that you know who would enjoy this podcast too. So hit them with my link, lockedonmizzou.com. That'll take them to YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So until next time, and next time, I think it's going to be Saturday afternoon. I don't know that I'm going to be here Friday. We'll see, but Saturday afternoon, definitely going to be having a post-game show ASAP, no matter what happens after the Missouri-Kansas State game, right here on Locked On Mizzou.